let's film a book review. Today's video is a book review of Jeanette Winterson's Wait, which is from the Canongate Myth series, which is a series of books Canongate published a while back, each of which is a retelling of a myth from a different culture, some Greek, some Roman, some Celtic, some Russian, etc, etc, and each is by a different author. Each is also illustrated by a different artist, and this story is illustrated by Marion Dukers. But more about the book. This is my third Jeanette Winterson book and my favourite so far. I adored this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, so know before I go any further that this is just going to be a rave review. I honestly didn't dislike anything about this book. It is very short. It comes in at 151 pages. Those pages don't have a terribly large amount of text on them. It is such a quick read. I read it in 2 days but could have read it in 1 if I hadn't started it so late at night. And this is a retelling of the myth of Atlas. Now, Atlas was a titan who, after the war between the Titans and the Olympian gods in ancient Greek mythology, was punished by Zeus to hold up the weight of the world on his shoulders. As probably the strongest man, well, titan in existence, this became his responsibility forevermore. And at the beginning of the story, Atlas is just, you know, chilling, resting the weight of the world on his shoulders, as he does every day, and Heracles, or Hercules as you might know him as, although Heracles is actually the Greek way of saying his name, comes strolling along because he needs Atlas's help in completing one of his 12 tasks. Now, I love the conversations that Atlas and Heracles have in this. In fact, the conversations between all of the characters in this are so sassy and honestly exactly how I would imagine these mythological characters to have been. For it being what you might feel quite like a modern retelling in the way that they speak and the way that they behave, like the prose style is very modern. It is honestly one of the most accurate depictions of Heracles in particular I have read in a myth retelling. He's just an absolute self-centered, misogynistic arsehole. And that is what Heracles is like in the original myths. He is like the most famous misogynist of all time, basically. Like, he is not the nicest person, although an interesting subject for mythology. And I absolutely love the way he's depicted in this story. It is so spot on in my opinion. It's exactly the way I imagine him and exactly the way I think he is in the original myths, just depicted in a more modern fashion. Atlas is a much more silent, contemplative character than Heracles, as you would imagine if you had this responsibility on you. What really are you going to do with the hours of your day? And the story in this is a retelling of the interaction between Heracles and Atlas, and Heracles in the myth takes over Atlas's burden for a short period whilst Atlas goes out into the world to help Heracles complete a task. Obviously somebody needs to hold up the world. Well, he's not there, so Heracles does it. And although the story starts there and retells that myth, by the end it has gone all the way into modern times and our future. The last few pages and one of the ending events is one of my favourite parts of the book. It was just the perfect ending. I feel like this review is not very critical, but I don't have any criticisms for it. It's not that plot driven. It is a retelling of a myth, but there's not that much of a story. It's a very bare bones short story, although you might not know the myth, so that there'd be more surprises in there for you. But even still, I don't think it's a novel full of suspense. It's just more of a character portrayal of these different gods and titans, and a more of a thoughtful, contemplative novel as we get inside Atlas's head and he thinks about the world and what's going on, and a kind of about his place in the grander scheme of things, the world itself, which makes you think about yourself in the grander scheme of things. And in fact it plays with very similar themes to the other 2 books I've read by Jeanette Winterson, which are The Stone Gods and Sex and the Cherries. And although it's about a man who's holding up the weight of the world, it's almost metaphorically about our own burdens and the weights we take upon ourselves, and whether we need to be burdened by some of the things that we let push ourselves down. And Jeanette Winterson herself says at the beginning of this story that the reason she told this myth to retell when Canongate approached her was because she felt like she identified with Atlas's struggle. I would highly, highly recommend checking it out whether you are familiar with the original myth or not. That's all I have to say. Like I said, this is just a rave review. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I enjoyed this book. Now I'm going to go and read some more Jeanette Winterson, I think. So until next time guys, happy reading and I'll see you all again soon. Bye!